Here we come towards the closing of the liturgical year. As we approach it, as we look towards Advent, it's that opportunity to begin to reflect on the readings that pull us towards, what is our priority? What do we hold most importantly? This year, among, at least for my life, all other years, it certainly has been one that is different, that has offered a great deal of thought and reflection in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a country seeking to address the inequalities that have been for centuries, to address the divisions that we have in this country and the difficulties throughout our world. And in the differences that we have, we're asked to search for wisdom, to look at how do we come together. God seeks unity. We look at the mystery of the Trinity, that perfect unity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that we are invited into that. And in this mystery, the Eucharist, that we are asked to celebrate with one another, in spite of any differences or opinions we may have, the realization that all of us are created in the image and likeness of God, and to wake up, to be wise, to recognize what is important. Each of us are called to keep our lamps burning brightly, but that also means to make sure that we have the reserve of oil that is required. Not to be foolish to decide I don't need it, but rather to depend on God's grace. In that grace, to realize we are dependent on God to help us in our daily life. And in that wisdom of seeking God, to recognize the here and the now. We don't know the hour nor the day of the Lord's coming, but are we prepared? Do we work for that unity and realize that priority of God's goodness? In our country, we have just gone underneath one of the most popular votes that have occurred in our history. More people voting, recognizing the gift of our democracy and taking the opportunity to go forward to offer our thoughts, our wishes, and coming and asking God to help us come together, to recognize, however those results may be, that it's not in gloating and it's not in anger, but rather an opportunity to realize God's gift to us. And how do we move forward? Not looking at the future, not living in the past, but in the now. And that's where, when I look at one of the 20th century theologians, that he would speak about the eternal now. It's not so much the past nor the future that we live in. God lives in the now. And as we hear in the readings, that now is a totalness of all that exists, a deep mystery, a mystery that for us humans that we have difficulty getting our arms around. But realizing God's eyes, all that happens in the instance of the now is what we look forward to. And in looking forward to it, are we prepared to trust in taking that invitation that God offers, that call to realize, do we have enough oil? Do we have enough grace? Do we keep our lights burning brightly? Are we awake? And realizing, especially in our world, that we are called to be awake, to realize that God created us in His image, to share that message of good news. And as we look forward to living that love and goodness, we ask God's grace to help us to recognize, how do we see Christ in one another, and how do we allow them to see Christ in us? May we continue to work, realizing God's grace for that eternal love in the now, of seeking the equality, the goodness, the love and the unity that God offers to us. And as we do so, that we look at the grace, that we look at our weaknesses, and in those weaknesses bring those before the Lord in reconciliation, asking Him to help us, to strengthen one another, to lift one another up, to truly give the opportunity of realizing how do we see Jesus, for He sees us in love and care and asks us to share that message.